Hi there, and welcome to Ancestral Recall. I'm your host, Eli Kaplan. This is part 2 of my 8-part retrospective on Alpha, Beta, and Unlimited, the first sets released for Magic the Gathering. These revolutionary sets created an entire genre of game, the trading card game, and I've been playing Magic since its inception. Now, this show is going to explore one of the colors, show how ABU created the template for thousands of following cards, and explain how these cards have inspired so many to come. Today, we're going to look at all the cards that matter from ABU's Black. Now, Black has some really powerful cards, and when I started playing, it was the color that I started off with. Now, let's talk about the flavor of Black. If we look at the color pie, Wizards declares that Black is the color of decay, of death, and of seeking individual interests at the expense of everybody else. It is the most selfish color and has the most varied types of attacks. Using Black, you can attempt to live forever by callously murdering every threat raised against you, or you can spend your days destroying your enemies, relishing victory more than you relish living to a ripe old age. Black's characteristic race started off as zombies. Later on, with Zendikar, vampires took over the job, but zombies have been in first place for most of the game's history. The original Iconics were vampires after a very brief instance of demons in this set. But a few instances of right-wing Christian fundamentalists denouncing the game as an ill for children changed that. Today, I'm going to go through all the Black cards of the set. I'll tell you how they work, what they've influenced in later sets, and what the coolest cards in the set are. I'll also do some big-picture analysis of how powerful the cards were at the game's inception. Black has 46 cards in the set. There are 10 enchantments, 16 creatures, 8 sorceries, and 8 instants and interrupts. Now, the color created many important precedents. Black creatures, more than any other, frequently have upkeep costs or drawbacks. If you want to summon the forces of entropy to your side, you're going to pay a price. The 5/5 demonic hordes required an upkeep of BBB every upkeep. And if you ever fail to pay the upkeep, they turn on you, tapping and destroying one of your own lands instead. The Lord of the Pit, the set's largest creature at 7/7. Okay, well, Force of Nature is bigger, but the largest Black creature demanded the creature to be sacrificed every upkeep, or it would deal 7 damage to you. And you couldn't choose to skip the sacrifice and just take that damage either. Nope, you were taking 7. But 7 damage in the air, trampling, that's over a third of a player's life total. Now, I love playing Lord of the Pit on the kitchen table, but far more often than not, it ate the swords to plowshares. There's so many giant demons that demand something from its controller, I can't mention them all. My favorite is Wayward Angel, a Sarah Angel variant from Odyssey that transforms into Lord of the Pit when you hit Threshold. She goes from the top of the morality scale to the very bottom. The best homage to demonic hordes is Helldozer. This card has one of my favorite names, doesn't require the upkeep cost, and can untap and attack if it happens to blow up a non-basic land. Now, in my opinion, Gristlebrand is probably the best big black demon with no inherent drawback, 7/7 lifelink, and if you offer him life, he'll refill your hand. Wow, that's amazing. Gristlebrand is a central character in the Magic storyline. But I'll tell you, without Alpha, Beta, and Unlimited, these hits would never have existed. Black demands commitment. The reward for commitment was having more powerful creatures, and by commitment here I mean playing swamps. Now at Common, Frozen Shade promised really huge pumps at the demand of constant investment. The rare Nightmare demanded a serious payment up front, but was a very powerful flyer. Now, surprisingly in 93, this card usually came out initially as a 3/3 or 4/4, thanks to ramp like Soul Ring or Dark Ritual. And while Nightmare hasn't had too many variants, there is one in Standard right now, Squelching Leeches. Black creatures had mixed levels of efficiency. At Common, there were Drudge Skeletons, excellent defensive creatures. Scathed Zombies were strictly average at 2/2 for 3 mana, but they had a lord, the Zombie Master. Now, the Zombie Master was not actually a zombie at the time. Since then, it's been eroded to be a zombie and give other zombies Swamp Walk and Regeneration. But these Scathed Zombies, they have been strictly outmoded. Just going by vanilla zombies, Innistrada's Walking Corpse is strictly better because it costs 1 less. But with 20 years of shifting power around, of course that's going to happen. Since then, yeah, people know Zombie Master was the worst lord in ABU. But at the time, some players just craved to get Zombie Masters and their thralls. Now, another common was Plague Rat. And for the first few months of release, Many players were craving Plague Rats because they could play as many as they got their hands on, and each one made the others bigger. In fact, at the 2001 Invitational, Hall of Famer Gary Weiss designed and then acquired a deck from the Auction of the People format, playing 20 Swamps, 8 Black Lotuses, and 32 Plague Rats under the bright lights. He smashed face with it. Weiss named the deck Jeff Donace is Gonna Love Me, in honor of level 5 judge Mike Donace, because back in the day, 93 or 94, before the 4 rule existed, Donace crushed Weiss with this very deck. And Weiss apparently never got over it. One of Black's early claims on the colored pie was forcing enemy creatures to attack. Come at me, bro. Nettling Imp forced a creature to attack or die, and could kill a creature if it got tapped by Twiddle or Icy Manipulator. Now, Nettling Imp hasn't had too many callbacks, but Ken Nagel, R&D designer, still harbors love for the Ice Age variant, Norrit, which could also untap blue creatures. Now, for quite a few years, Norrit was Nagel's writing handle. Now, this effect has had a mirror in Blue's Siren's Call in the same set. In 2014, forcing creatures to attack has mostly migrated into blue, such as in the case of Bind the Thassa, but sometimes you'll see some black in it, like Shipwrecked Singer. The other natural partner to Nettling Imp was Royal Assassin, or as they say in French, Assassin Royale, with cheese. This guy knows the power of a quick, controlled movement in the right place. This card put the fear into opponents when it hit the table. Now, it did have a proviso, it could only kill tapped creatures, but this was Magic's first creature that could directly reach across the table and kill other creatures. It even directly inspired a common that's been reprinted to death, Assassinate. That is what he does. From Stronghold Assassin, to Vizara the Dreadful, to Avatar of Woe, to Vraska the Unseen, this is where it all started, by ending lives. Now, Royal Assassin was a natural combo with Nettling Imp, but also worked extremely well with one of the most useful and powerful artifacts, Icy Manipulator. Black has 2 powerful uncommon creatures. The first, Sengir Vampire, was an efficient flyer. In fact, Sengir Vampire was the first high-profile reprint in an expert-level expansion in Torment. The other, Hypnotic Spectre, is an incredibly terrifying creature because every time it connects with the opponents, they have to discard a card at random. This was a natural combination with Dark Ritual, an interrupt that could give you access to 3 mana, all in one heady shot, as early as turn 1. And if your opponent didn't have a Swords to Plowshares or Lightning Bolt, a turn 1 hippie could be nigh unbeatable. I've done this many times over the years, and every single time, I feel dirty. Some other notable uncommons were Black Knight, one of only 2 creatures with protection in Alpha, and Bogwraith. Now, my favorite variant on Black Knight is Hand of Cruelty, because I personally think Bushido is an awesome mechanic and it wins in a combat over first strike. Bogwraith was opponent hoser against other black decks and a regular in early sideboards. This was Black's answer to Black, because Terror was out of the question. Now, these 2 creatures may be quite strong and actually on the good side of the modern power curve, but they were still falling behind Hypnotic Spectre and Sengir Vampire. On the spell side, Black was the king of spot removal. ABU had Terror and the expensive Drain Life at common. Now, both cards were popular removal spells, and in the case of Mike Long's Pross Bloom deck, a finisher. There was also Paralyze, a dirt-cheap enchantment that tapped a creature and required its controller to pony up 4 mana every time it untapped. This taxing effect has since been shifted to white. At uncommon, Black had Pestilence, one of the most powerful global enchantments printed. This enchantment allows its controller to pay Black as many times as they want, dealing 1 damage to each creature for each mana spent, also to players. The only downside with Pestilence is that if all the creatures went away, Pestilence had to be sacrificed. Pestilence was a dominant common in both ABU and in Urza's Saga, where it wrecked people in Limited. But let's go back to Terra for a second. The first flavor question I ever thought about and heard from the mouths of many other players is, I've got a wall of swords. How does a wall die to Terror? It doesn't make sense. Okay, let's face it, it doesn't make sense. But mechanically, it works. Terror is an absolute staple and has only gotten better over time. The most famous analog is today's Doomblade. Doomblade can destroy artifact creatures, but can't deal with regenerators. Now, I'm going to argue that Doomblade is a superior spell in most formats. Wizards has reprinted Terror many times, but most notably in Mirrodin, a set with only a small subset of creatures that it could target. There were so many artifact creatures. Now, the reason Wizards printed Terror in this set was to emphasize how players should change their pick orders, drafting Shatter over Terror, and this inverted the usual limited rules. But in core set draft, Terror is always an extremely high pick, whereas Shatter is among the dregs. What are some cards that didn't carry over to other sets? Well, Deathlace for one. Deathlace's effect has proven to be unplayable in any constructed format it was legal in. Black also got Death Grip, an enchantment that countered green spells being cast. A mirror of green's life force, this incredibly out-of-color hoser mechanism got rejected for good soon after. Gloom, hating white, was the most vicious color hoser of them all, requiring an onerous 3 additional mana for each white spell players wanted to play. And you could play it on turn 1 with Dark Ritual. Oh, that was brutal. Now, the only thing people did with laces was with blue-red, so they could lace a permanent, then hit it with red or blue elemental blast, whichever is appropriate. This is funny, but in the words of Dark Helmet, this isn't the wide world of sports, just laces suck. I'm saying this now, and I'm not going to go into it with future videos. Just say, laces, check, dealt with. Another thing Black has tried to do that didn't catch on was giving all black creatures +1/+1 with Bad Moon. Bad Moon, Rising, has seen few reprints and virtually no variants except for Death Pits of Wrath, while white gets Crusade, Jihad, Glorious Anthem, and Dictate of Heliod, to name a few. Yeah, Bad Moon got reprinted in the time-shifted sheet in Time Spiral. Big deal. Black is rarely so generous as to give its team benefits, unless it's simultaneously keeping everyone else down. Check out Ascendant Evencar for an example. An ability that Black has played with over time is Howl from Beyond. The instant speed creature pump only boosts power, not toughness. But if you have an unblocked creature, it's quite fine. Many players have seen Howl from Beyond go horribly wrong, though. The variant on this spell that has won the most games, I'm going to tell you, it's Hatred from Exodus. This rare comboed especially well with shadow creatures. If you play Hatred on an unblocked guy and have the appropriate level of life, it's game over, baby. Game over. Today, Howl from Beyond tends to be more in red than black these days, as seen on Enrage. Another extremely powerful effect Black got in ABU was Demonic Tutor. So if you want any card in your deck, from Wrath of God to Armageddon, to Balance, to Wheel of Fortune, if you're paying black, you just go 1B, Demonic Tutor, go get it. This is Magic's most powerful and versatile tutor of all time, and it is a staple in Vintage. When the first restricted list got printed, nobody was surprised to see Demonic Tutor on it. Now, while every color gets tutor effects for cards of its specialty now and again, this card established that Black could go get anything. This cool ability also led to one of my favorite keywords, House Dimmer's Transmute. Today, this effect costs 2 BB. Now, my favorite Demonic Tutor variant is Planar Portal, an invasion rare artifact that let you repeatedly tutor for the card of your choice. It costs a gajillion mana, but who cares? You're always getting a bomb. Black corrupts the land, and so we see Evil Presence, which turns a land into a swamp, as well as Cursed Land, which deals damage to a land's controller every turn. It's like nagging pollution. Now, the problem with Cursed Land is that it was overpriced, but nearly impossible to deal with. And Evil Presence's power was too low. Later versions, such as Contaminated Ground, punish the player for tapping the land, or allowed the Aura's controller to just outright destroy the enchanted land, but it didn't quite work out. Another key element of black was skullduggery and beating them over the head with influence. And that came out with ante cards. Yeah, we're talking about ante today. Ante was one of the original mechanics in playtesting Magic and continued for about 2 years after the game saw print. Ante allowed players to get new cards in an environment when you couldn't buy them, and opponents were unwilling to trade. Under ante rules, at the beginning of each game, each player had to put up a random card from their deck as a stake, and the winner of the game gets to walk away with both cards. Now, black had 3 rare ante cards that allowed their masters to break the rules. Dark Pact allowed players who put up a chase card to switch it sight unseen with the top card of their library. Demonic Attorney forces your opponent to concede, or both players add another card to their side to increase the stakes. There are other win more cards in Magic, but if you're in the driver's seat, this win more card does more than any other win more card because opponents will say, oh, I don't want to lose this game, and they'll scoop. They're going to take their losses and cut them. The other thing is, ante cards allowed you to play a deck that was less than 40 cards. Now, if the game wasn't for ante, you just removed them from the game before the game began, letting you technically play a deck with less than 40. It's unfair. That's another reason that ante cards were immediately banned in competitive play. If someone asks you, what's the most powerful draw spell in Magic's history? I'm going to tell you right now, there is a correct answer, and no, sadly, it isn't Ancestral Recall. Not even close. Contract from Below forced its controller to ante an additional card, which is a stark price indeed. But for 1 solitary black mana, you discard your hand to draw 7 new cards. Yeah, this is a sorcery, whereas Ancestral Recall is an instant, but 4 more cards for the same mana cost? It's not even a contest. Contract from Below wins, hands down. Speaking of crazy prices, check out Lich, an enchantment that lets you keep playing even though you no longer have life. Instead of having a life total, you draw a card every time that you would gain life, and sacrifice a permanent for each point of damage you take. When Lich leaves play, that's it. The enchantment's controller is actually dead this time. So, Lich leaves its controller dead to Disenchants or Nivinaral's Disc, or any kind of bounce spell, such as Boomerang. Now, Lich has inspired other cards, such as Odyssey's Nefarious Lich, Darksteel's Lich's Tomb, and New Phyrexia's Phyrexian Unlife. And there's also Torment's Transcendence, which has a slightly similar effects, in that you're going to gain life, but yeah, it goes the other way. Creatures coming back from the graveyard is perfectly normal, but keeping a player alive under unusual conditions is a very small niche in Magic. What would you give for just 1 more turn? As the Master of Death, black could reverse it with Animate Dead. Now, this enchantment has been eroded several times, so I'm just going to show you the current wording. Check it out. The alternative would be Raise Dead, which only costs a single black mana, but only brought back creatures from your yard to your hand. Getting dead creatures directly into play is almost always more expensive than 1B today, and it almost always can break formats. Reanimator took a couple years to really come to the forefront of tournaments, but it had staked out its claim from the game's beginning. Now, there's a horrible precedent, if you ask me, that started in Alpha and got undone years later, and that's Nether Shadow. Now, Nether Shadow is the first creature to have Haste. Yeah, black got Haste first. Weird, huh? That's not the problem with this card, though. The problem with Nether Shadow is that when it hits play, you suddenly have to take care about maintaining the order of the graveyard. There are other cards that care about graveyard order as well, like Weatherlight's Death Spark. But this type of card is less of a headache for its users, and more powerful when it doesn't have the same strings attached, and requires a cost like removing a card from the graveyard. Check out Icarid, made famous by John Rizzo, as an example. The suddenly physical placement matters rule thing comes up in a much more prominent fashion when we get to artifacts, though. Here's one more example of a new mechanic that doesn't correspond to the modern color pie. Land destruction is primarily in red and green. It's tertiary in black. Alpha gets 3 land destruction spells. There's Stone Rain in red, Ice Storm in green, and both of those cost 3 mana. Black gets Sinkhole for 2 mana. What gives? Well, Garfield spread around the land hate love around at the time, and he wanted to reward black for playing more black. Since then, Black occasionally gets some good land destruction, such as Befoul, but this is the exception rather than the rule. Mind Twist is my number 3 discard spell of all time. Go look at that list. So powerful, so worthy of restriction. It was so stupid of Wizards to reprint it in 4th edition. Now, random discard was the norm for Alpha, and with Artifact Mana and Dark Ritual to ramp this out for 4 or 5 cards on turn 3 or 2, this effect was just plain broken. I've Mind Twisted way too many people to feel good about it. While Wizards kept trying to find a better, fairer version, Wizards kept reprinting Dark Ritual. This card is what made Black 3-drops so much more powerful than any other color's 3-drops for so many years, because they came out way faster than they should have. Now, Dark Ritual violates the games in so many ways, and since it's all in one shot and really degrades your hand over the long term, it's degrading for the caster as well. That's great flavor for Black, and it's powerful, but just overall not good gameplay. There are some more cards that don't really interest me much, like Warp Artifact, a bizarre black hoser against artifacts that really wasn't such a big deal. 1 damage every turn for 2 black mana, not worth it. But the craziest black card of all I gotta tell you about is Word of Command. This spell lets you use an opponent's mana to play a spell in their hand. Now, the card's current wording only loosely looks like how it does as printed. This is the card that inspired Mindslaver and the current standard legal spell, Worse Fears. Word of Command is definitely a risky card to make because the effect was so wild and hard to understand, even by the standards of 93. But I would not call Word of Command the strangest card in the set, though. This is Beta's Unholy Strength. And this is Revised Unholy Strength. Ugh. The original art isn't that great, I'll say that, but the censored version? No thanks, there's no point to it. Let me tell you how that happened. During the late 80s and early 90s, there was a small cottage industry in the United States of right-wing fundamentalist Christians who wanted to get positions on school boards and other positions of power, or sue school districts for damages by giving school districts a hard time for letting students do things that they found religiously objectionable. Many schools banned Dungeons & Dragons and other role-playing games in the 80s or 90s, or ended up going to court because they had to deal with these moral defenders. Now, I read so many letters on this topic in TSR's Dragon magazine. And there were lots of various legal cases where principals just decided to save the school district money and banned the game. Magic's initial marketing was to board gamers and tabletop RPG players, not kids. But as the game got bigger and kids started to catch on to the game, Wizards found out that the Bible thumpers would go after their game too. So Wizards bowed to censorship and took out the demons and the offending pentagrams, hoping that Pat Robertson, I get off on being morally indignant at other people, crowd people, they hoped that they would be satisfied. And they weren't. There's very little that you can do about attention, I want to say seekers. Yes, seekers is a nice word. Seekers, attention seekers, who have fixated on a topic, other than let them have their say and then come back with evidence that they're making mountains out of molehills. And I'm going to tell you, Unholy Strength and its subsequent Bowdlerization was a huge influence on the way that Black was portrayed in the game. For many years later, demons were banished from Magic. Marit's Lodge, the eldritch horror of Ice Age, didn't even show up on the card, and we never got a clear picture of what it was until Dark Depths. Mirage's Spirit of the Night was very poorly drawn. They couldn't get close up. Vizardrix was a demon, right? More like a giant bunny. It took until 2002's Onslaught for Wizards to breach the subject with Grinning Demon, 8 years after Revised. But during that time, pop culture got things like Doom and the Internet, which showed people that, well, all in all, Magic was pretty tame and safe. During this time, Wizards kept Black creatures to spooky minions, the undead, and Phyrexians. Now, I appreciate the fact that for a long time, Wizards' storyline focused on the Phyrexians, who were a biotechnical nightmare, but far more technologically steampunk style than actually traditional magic. They were definitely not demons. And this kept a lot of classic Black fantasy tropes from showing up in Magic for years. We had angels, okay, but who are the angels' classic nemeses? Demons, that's who. Now, demons are the Black iconic creature, and I'm saying that's a good thing. I'd like to apologize to any people who feel like their faith was insulted in that discussion just now, by the way. As a person who strongly identifies with his faith, I do not want to disparage the acts of people who choose to live out their beliefs in the way that they understand their faith. But the minute that your faith tells people who didn't sign up that they can't do something that harms nobody, I think you lose your claim to a moral or ethical high ground. There are real evils in this world, such as hunger, poverty, disease, discrimination, and environmental hazards. Why not try to deal with those rather than card games? I mean, I do my part anyway. Just live and let live. Sorry, had to do a bit of soapboxing there. So what are my top 5 coolest cards for ABU's Black? Let's do a countdown. Number 5, Sengir Vampire. He grows more powerful as he destroys your enemy's pawns. Number 4, Royal Assassin. He's fragile and easy to kill if you spot him, but the damage he can do, especially as part of a team, is nuts. Number 3, Word of Command. Get into your opponent's head, literally. Number 2, Mind Twist. This is unmitigated power doing a trademarked Black effect. And the coolest card in Black and Alpha Beta Unlimited is Hypnotic Spectre. This evil ghost could strike fear into the opponent's heart and empty their hand as early as turn 2. So that's Black. I hope you guys enjoyed the profile. ABU has so many flavorful cards, so many creative designs, and so many fundamentally relevant concepts. It's hard to make a distinct conclusion at this point. After I do all the other colors, I'm going to talk about the initial color wheel, its balance, which colors had strong designs, which colors had weak designs, and we'll get more into in-depth discussion of Black as a theme. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the show, hammer on that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you're new to the show, go back and check out my other shows. I really do appreciate your support. This is Eli Kaplan for Ancestral Recall, signing off. Good games and good luck.